Comrades and friends, welcome to the program Global Weekly News, serial number 89. First, remembering Hugo Chavez. Remembering Hugo Chavez, the revolutionary commander who defied US imperialism and dedicated his entire life to uplifting the poor and oppressed in Venezuela and across Latin America. On 6th March, we honor Chavez's glorious legacy as a socialist leader whose radical measures strengthened the hands of people's movements in their march towards making history. Chavez rejected US domination, united global South nations, and provided an inspiring model of 21st century socialism based on humanist values. 11 years after his untimely death, Chavez's revolutionary zeal for justice, sovereignty, and anti-imperialism shines as a guiding light for all those struggling against oppression worldwide. Let us have a look at one of his speeches. The Obama government condemns terrorism, unless it is terrorism and that they have committed themselves. By themselves, the US or their allies Israel, they accuse me of sponsoring terrorism. They are the ones who sponsored terrorism. I take this opportunity to once again condemn from the depth of my soul and my gut the state of Israel. Damn you, state of Israel, terrorists and killers. Long live the Palestinian people. Long live free Palestine. Comrades, now let us go to Africa to see the health facilities in Kenya. IMF, World Bank and World Trade Organizations are the pet dogs of international finance capital. These institutions pressurize the developing countries to privatize the entire health sector. The Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, KMPDU, has announced that it will ramp up industrial action in the coming days as the government has failed to meet its demands for the assignment of interns and the payment of postgraduate fees. This announcement followed weeks of intensified demonstrations by the union. During one of the most recent protests in Nairobi on 29 February, KMPDU Secretary General Bhimji Atela sustained a head injury when the police sprayed tear gas on the protesters. 25 more protesters were injured in the stampede. While Atela was taken to the hospital, most of the other injured were forced to take care of their own injuries as they have no valid medical insurance. The violence experienced during the protest led to further reactions. The reactions culminated in a new demonstration in Nairobi on 4th March. Support came from health associations and trade unions across the continent. Currently, over 1,000 interns are still awaiting placement. Patients are also affected due to shortage of health staff. In 2022, the country faced shortages of over 2,000 resident doctors, 1,000 pharmacists, and 38,000 nurses. Comrades, now Putin has issued a warning on nuclear war. The Russia-Ukraine war, which began on 24th February in 2022, still continues for more than 2 years. Russian President Vladimir Putin gave advance notice that he was obliged to respond with nuclear capability if the Russian statehood is threatened. The Western countries, NATO member states, are giving arms and weapons to Ukraine with the stated intention to destroy Russia's economy, create social and political instability that would lead to a regime change in the Kremlin. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke in US Congress that NATO will be in a fight with Russia if Ukraine was defeated. 20 European countries at a summit in Paris where discussions took place on sending troops to Ukraine on a bilateral basis. Comrades, the situation in Gaza is getting day by day worse and worse. Hands Up Rafah movement all over the world. Over 100 actions were held on 2nd March all over the world to demand Israel not to invade Rafah, a city near Egyptian border in Gaza, where more than 10 lakh people are sheltered in tents and camps. The call for the International Day of Protest was given by the Palestinian Youth Movement, the International People's Assembly, Progressive International, African and Latin American Forums, the Trade Union Confederation of the Americas, and the International League of People's Struggle, among others. Regarding the day of action, Irwin Jim, the General Secretary of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, said, Israel and US have been backed into a corner. That is, Israel and US have been cornered. Last week, foreign ministers from 26 out of 27 European Union member states declared the rejection of the ongoing genocide and warned Israel against going ahead with the invasion of Rafah. These cracks in the Western imperialist bloc are a result of the organizing and mobilizing by people across the world. Now is the time to keep the pressure on and remind Biden, Netanyahu, and all the other war criminals that the days are numbered. Well, this is what Irwin Jim said, General Secretary of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa. Two of the largest mobilizations on 2nd March took place in the capitals of Cuba and Venezuela. In Havana, Cuban capital, thousands gathered at the anti-imperialist tribunal led by the leaders of the Cuban Revolution to ratify their solidarity with the Palestinian people and condemn Israel's genocide. Cuban President Michael Diaz-Canel was present in the mobilization. He said that the impunity of those who bomb the people without mercy angers us. The massive demonstration in Caracas of Venezuela saw participation of several government ministers and leaders of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, including Chavez's daughter, Maria Gabriela Chavez. In the United States, hundreds of thousands took to the streets in protest again across dozens of U.S. cities, including Los Angeles, Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, New Orleans, New York City, Portland, and Washington, D.C. People's Dispatch, the international progressive medium, spoke to Brian Becker, Executive Director of the Answer. Answer means Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. Answer Coalition on the ground at a march in New York City. That is, People's Dispatch spoke to Brian Becker. Brian Becker, the Executive Director of the Answer Coalition, he told, we are witnessing a sea change in consciousness of the people in the U.S. for the first time since the Palestine catastrophe. When people see masses of people like the demonstration today, 50,000 strong, right in New York City in the pouring rain, when they see people coming together, that moves them, that creates new energy. Israel has warned that on 10th March, the first day of Ramadan, is going to attack Rafah. Bold leaders have been warning that an invasion of Rafah would be a humanitarian disaster. If Israel attacks Rafah, it will be against international humanitarian law and the International Court of Justice orders. Comrades, there are elections in Mexico. Let us look at it. On 2nd June, elections will be held in Mexico for the presidential post. The present left president, Lopez Obrador's presidential term is only for one term of 6 years as per the Mexican constitution. Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo, presidential candidate for the National Regeneration Movement, Morena Party of Obrador, Labour Party, and Green Ecologist Party of Mexico coalition, launched her electoral campaign on 1st March. Sheinbaum is the former mayor of Mexico City. She is now the favorite in all the opinion polls. At the campaign launch, which saw tens of thousands of party poured into the campaign venue, Sheinbaum presented the 100 points of her nation project, which will be the roadmap of her administration if she becomes the first woman to occupy the chair of the National Palace. At the launch of the campaign, the presidential hopeful Sheinbaum pointed out that in these elections there are only two paths. One where the transformation initiated by Lopez Obrador continues, and the other, the one that wants corruption and neoliberalism to return. She highlighted that more than 5 years after starting the process of the fourth transformation, great progress has been made. The minimum wage was doubled and tripled in the border region with the US, and roads, refineries, airports, trains and power plants were built. New school textbooks were launched, and the country has not gone into debt trap. During the more than 5 years of the presidency under Andrés Manuel López Obrador, in short AMLO, many myths were demolished, many wrong opinions were demolished, myths. It was said that the state should subordinate itself to the market, and that if the minimum wage increases, there would be inflation and there would be no investment. So all these myths were demolished. The presidential candidate recalled those. Likewise, she highlighted that in Mexico today there is economic growth, an increase in jobs. There has been a decrease in poverty and inequality. However, Sheinbaum stated that derived from more than 3 decades of neoliberalism, there is still much to be done. She highlighted the creation of a partial pension to more than 10 lakh women aged 60 to 64. In 8 routes, passenger trains will be introduced. State airline will be strengthened. Port will be expanded and modernized. Minimum wages of around 11% annually will be increased. Judges, magistrates and ministers will be popularly elected. In the face of global climate change, emphasis will be given up to produce green energy. There will not be increases in prices of electricity or gas. Claudia finally committed to protecting the legacy of Lopez Obrador. Comrades, the Latin American countries and Caribbean countries had a summit recently. Let us look at it. CELAC 8th Summit. The Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, held their 8th summit, stressing peace and dialogue in a world threatened by US domination. The summit was held in the city of Kingstown. Kingstown is the capital of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. The discussions largely focused on the need for peace and security in both the hemisphere as well as the globe. Special representative of the Chinese government in Latin American affairs, Qiu Zhaki, also attended the summit. In his opening remarks, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres highlighted the role of the Latin America in the dedication to sustained efforts towards peace and security. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro during the summit commented on his country's dedication to these ideals of sovereignty and the preservation of peace, democracy and security. Venezuela is preparing for totally reliable and transparent elections. Maduro went further to say, "We do not agree with any type of hidden invasion, bringing troops from here or there. It is not the solution for Haiti." The presidents of Cuba, Barbados, Bolivia, Colombia and Honduras held a side meeting during the summit on the situation in Gaza. They told the world, enough of the genocide in the Gaza Strip. Let us follow the path of dialogue and peace. Colombian President Gustavo Petro warned that what happens to Palestine today can happen to any other country if US domination is allowed to continue. The presidency of CELAC is a rotating post and has been passed on to Honduras, where Honduras President Xiomara Castro will take up the role. In her remarks, she declared, "We ourselves must solve our problems without interference or external pressure." Comrades, now Israel's war on Hamas is getting widened further. Let us look at it. Israel attack on Lebanon. Close to 300 people have been killed in Lebanon due to Israeli strike since October 7, 2023. The latest round of attacks on 5th March killed 3 civilians and were followed by a barrage of missile attacks by Hezbollah. Hezbollah claimed it carried out almost a dozen retaliatory attacks on various locations inside northern Israel, targeting mostly military installations. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Gallant yet again threatened to carry out an all-out war against Lebanon. Gallant has also threatened that even if there is a ceasefire in Gaza, Israel will wage a war in Lebanon with the objective of pushing Hezbollah away from its northern borders. Despite Gallant's threats, Lebanese Prime Minister reiterated his country's stand that the only way peace can be achieved in the region is if the world community takes steps to stop Israel's wars. The UN Security Council adopted Resolution 1701 in 2006 asking for the complete Israeli withdrawal from all Lebanese territories. However, Israel still controls some parts of the Lebanese territory in violation of the resolution. Comrades, now Israel is going to restrict the Palestinians entering Al-Aqsa Mosque during the coming Ramzan month. Israeli security forces are preparing to implement unprecedented restrictions on the Palestinians visiting the Al-Aqsa Mosque in the occupied East Jerusalem during Ramzan. The move is despite warnings that it may provoke greater resistance in the West Bank, which is already facing increased assault from the Israeli occupation forces since the war on Gaza began. Ben-Gvir, Israel's national security minister, chalked out plans for restrictions on the Palestinians. Hamas has warned against the restrictions, calling it an assault on Palestinians' freedom of worship. Ismail Haniyeh, head of Hamas, had called Palestinians in Jerusalem and the West Bank to march to Al-Aqsa on the first day of Ramadan, that is 10th March, to defy the restrictions. During Ramzan last year, Israeli occupation forces arrested over 400 Palestinians during repeated raids on the mosque compound. In 2022, violence by the occupation forces on worshippers at Al-Aqsa had led to rocket fire from Gaza, followed by Israeli bombing of the besieged territory for 11 days, killing over 270 Palestinians. Lastly, we are going to see the UK's immigration policy. Migrants face new threats by UK's immigration policy. The number of migrant workers dependent on visa in the United Kingdom reached record levels in 2023. Overall, more than 140,000 visas were issued to health and care workers, of which more than 89,000 were granted to care workers and home carers. UK is facing health workforce crisis. Accumulated cuts to National Health Service funding, rising cost of living, and unrelenting privatization trends are making it more difficult to retain workers in this field. Unwilling to allocate adequate support for strengthening the National Health Service, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government has instead continued to rely on workers from countries like India, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, etc. Visa for family members of migrants is denied. This is all, comrades, the Global Weekly News, serial number 89. See you next week. Last salam. Please share among your friends and press the like button If you have any comments, welcome. Thank you.